You've probably spent a few evenings scrolling through endless listings, wondering if any spotting scope will actually stay steady in your hands, give you a clean picture, and not feel like you're lugging a piece of artillery around the woods. The fear of splurging on a high-end model that ends up shaking like a leaf, or buying something that looks great on paper but disappears into a bag of junk after a couple of trips, is real. That's why today I'm looking at the Swarovski Optik SWAROBALANCE 1435 by 50, a scope that promises razor-sharp, shake-free views with its SWAROBALANCE tech. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the biggest question most people have is whether they actually need a stabilized handheld scope or if a regular spotting scope on a tripod will do. The SWAROBALANCE is built around a magnetic stabilization system that counteracts hand tremors, so you can hold it at arm's length and still see crisp detail at 35 magnification. In practice, that means you can stay on a hidden bird's nest while hiking a ridge, or keep your eyes on a deer that's just a few yards away without having to set up a tripod each time you move. If you're the type who likes to stay mobile, think field biologists, birders who cover large wetland areas, or hunters who need to quickly scan a clearing. The handheld stabilization is the core value here. If you're the sort of user who sets up a tripod and stays put for a while, the SWAROBALANCE's main selling point becomes less compelling. You'll still get superb optics, but you'll be paying a premium for a feature you may never use. That's the first hidden trade-off, the price tag. Swarovski optics sit at the very top of the market, and the SWAROBALANCE is no exception. It's an investment, and the warranty coverage is solid, but you have to be comfortable spending a few $1,000s on a single piece of equipment. Let's talk about how it actually performs in the field. The high light transmission claim isn't just marketing fluff. On a misty morning in the Appalachians, the scope delivered a bright, contrast-rich image that let me pick out individual pine needles on a distant ridge. At 14 I could see a hawk's wing pattern clearly, and when I cranked up to 35 the view stayed surprisingly clean, no grain, no loss of detail. That's because the 50mm objective gathers a lot of light, and the optics are engineered to preserve that brightness even at the highest magnifications. If you're doing low-light birding at dusk, that extra light can be the difference between spotting a nightjar and missing it entirely. The stabilization system, however, isn't a magic wand. It works best when you hold the scope steady and keep the grip firm. If you're on a bumpy boat or riding a motorcycle, the magnetic counterweights can be overwhelmed by larger, erratic movements, and you'll still see some shake. In my experience, the sweet spot is a steady stance, a rock, a fence post, or a short tripod leg if you need an extra boost. So the practical strength is that it makes handheld use viable for most static observing scenarios, but it's not a substitute for a proper mount when you need absolute steadiness in turbulent conditions. Another practical consideration is ergonomics. The scope weighs around 2.5 kilograms, which is heavier than a typical handheld scope but lighter than many tripod-mounted models of similar power. Carrying it around for a whole day on a hike is doable, especially if you have a harness or a padded shoulder strap. The weight also contributes to the stabilization. The mass helps dampen minor tremors. The downside is that the bulk can be tiring if you're constantly moving, and you'll need a sturdy bag to protect the optics when you're not using them. For someone who expects to travel light, this might be a deal-breaker. One thing I've seen buyers overlook is the learning curve. The SWAROBALANCE system has a small balance knob that lets you fine-tune the magnetic field to match your hand's natural tremor frequency. It takes a couple of minutes to get the feel, but once set, you'll notice the difference instantly. If you're the type who wants a plug-and-play experience, you might find that extra adjustment a bit fiddly. Conversely, if you enjoy tweaking gear to match your own style, you'll appreciate that level of control. Now, who should actually put this into their kit? If you spend weekends chasing raptors across open fields, need to quickly scan a landscape without setting up a tripod, and you value the absolute sharpness that only Swarovski can deliver, the SWAROBALANCE fits like a glove. It also shines for marine observers. Think dolphin watching from a kayak, where you can hold the scope steady while paddling and still see the sleek bodies gliding beneath the surface. The high light transmission helps when the water is a deep blue and you're trying to pick out a fin. Who should skip it? If your primary use is static observation from a fixed point, like a